to trade with Europe, won't we need a trade deal?
No, there's so much nonsense talked about trade agreements. The EU is a trade deal, and it's very bad for us.
There's an old-fashioned view among politicians that trade is something that politicians organise. It's not.
Trade was all about the great and the good from one country signing a treaty with the great and the good of another country. But real life is starting to leave that behind.
I've headed back to South Shields to visit John Mills, one of the Labour Party's biggest donors. His company, JML, has hundreds of products manufactured for them in countries all around the world and exports thousands of container loads of goods every year to every corner of the planet. This business is truly global.
Well, we export to about 85 countries at the last count. The majority of these countries are not in the European Union. But it's actually no more difficult for us to sell to the United States or to Australia or to even China than it is to sell to the EU.
The idea that you have to be in the European Union to trade with the European Union is a total absurdity.
Wander into any shop in Britain and you'll find goods from all over the world. Cameras and TVs from Japan, computers and phones from America. But we have no trade deals with these countries.
You don't need a trade deal with a country to be able to trade with it. If you go shopping, what do? Well, you buy Chinese goods, you buy Korean goods, you buy American goods, and yet none of those countries are part of the European Union.
China doesn't have a trade deal with the European Union, nor does the United States, nor does India. You don't need trade deals. Trade involves having a product or a service which other people are prepared to buy at whatever price you can produce it for.
Though we don't need a trade deal to trade with Europe, it's highly likely they will want one, for one simple reason.
The EU is desperate to keep its goods flowing into the UK.
You go outside, you count, don't take my word for it, go count the number of Audis, BMWs, Mercedes, Volkswagens. You'll find it's over 30% of our market. The Germans' biggest industry needs us to the tune of 16 billion plus every year.
We are actually the biggest market for the rest of the European Union. We are not a supplicant. We need a bit of self-belief and a bit of self-confidence.
Even though we're EU members, since the turn of the century, the proportion of British trade with the EU has been in steep decline, while trade with the rest of the world has been rising sharply.
There's no trade deal at the moment with China. The EU does not have one. But if you look at Anglo-Chinese trade over the last 10 years, say, that has been growing several times faster than Anglo-EU trade, where, of course, there is a trade deal.
Our percentage of trade with the EU is falling virtually by the minute. I mean, it's tumbling even as we conduct this interview.
Every single year that goes by, the percentage of British overseas business that is done outside the EU grows at double the rate of the business we do inside the EU.
They need us more than we need them.
But what if the EU proposes a trade deal which forces on us open borders and other stuff we don't like?
If a proposed trade deal is unacceptable to us, whether it's with the EU or anybody else, we just don't sign it.